Today we're going to do something a bit different. On the bench I have a Stihl 08S. This is one of the earlier ones. You can tell by the sawtooth logo, so it's before about 76, 77, something like that. As you can see, this one's set up as a chainsaw, but what makes these things cool is the fact that they were a universal engine. They were sold as multiple different bits of equipment. So what I'll do is I will just video part of the process of me converting this from a chainsaw into the BT309, which was a single man auger or drill. So basic overview for those who aren't aware of these things. It started with the 07, then we got the 08, and then the 08S is the improved version. Their capacity depends on the year they were manufactured. They were between 48 and 56 cc's, depending on when they were made. A rough guideline of when they were made, they started in the early 60s and they continued manufacturing them until the early 2000s in Brazil. The later ones were mostly set up as chainsaws. They ran a different front handle. They actually got a chain brake later on in life, and some of the safety features improved. This is an earlier one. It doesn't have a handguard. It has nothing at all as far as safety goes. Generally, they ran 17 or 21 inch bars and they ran 404 chain. They changed later on to running 3882 setups. Generally, most of these older ones and any of the ones that are adapted to drive other equipment will run a 404 7.2 spur sprocket to fit the adapter. So what I'll do is I'll move the camera around. I'll just start pulling this thing down. I'll show you guys some of that, some of the process of setting it up. Then we'll set it up as a drill and hopefully give it a run. So currently set up as a chainsaw. So we'll start pulling it down. I've got these bar nuts loose already, so it saves me a bit of hassle. In the background, that's the BT309 attachment. So what allows this to happen? When you undo the bar nuts on these and you pull the side cover off, the oil tank and everything comes with it. So as we remove that off, that's our oil tank for when it is operating as a chainsaw. That's our oil pump in there. On the end of our sprocket, I'll show it better, you can see there's a little nub that drives the oil pump when it is a chainsaw. Because of the way these oil from the outside upper, they require a different bar. They're the 3002 mount, the same as like an MS 880, 881. However, they need the oil holes to go the whole way through the bar. If you can't get the older bars, you can drill them to make them work. So that's a 17 inch 63 gauge hard nose bar. So that's running 404. You can set them up with rim sprockets and run 388s. You want a lot of gearing because there's not a lot of RPM, so that's how you get your chain speed. Okay, so if we look at the saw now, we've got the main body of it. We've got our spur drive on it that sits out the side. Onto our spur drive, we use this, I call it nylon, but they might be plastic. I can't remember the actual term for it. These drive bushes drive the accessories. So on the back of our BT309, we can see we have a sprocket. This basically makes the spur sprocket to the drive sprocket on the back of this attachment. So I'll just go through it and bolt it all up. It's not a big process. I don't know if I'll show it all on camera, but I'll try and give you a rough idea of what's going on at least. So drop on our adapter. Got to remember which way I need to orientate this. I'm pretty sure that's up. So the BT309 mounts off one of the bar studs here at the front, doesn't mount off the other. It's only one of the two, and I can't remember which one for the life of me it is. That one right there, obviously. I should point out before I put it together, what's going on here is just a reduction gearbox. That's what this drive is. So if I put one turn of input to the actual shaft, you can probably make out how fast the sprocket is turning. So the input from there, one rotation here, only equals about a quarter of a rotation at the other end. With the BT308, the two-man auger, it's a much bigger gearing reduction again on top of that. I do have one of those, but I can't really show it because I can't work with it on the bench and record it at the same time. We'll just bolt this together. The hardest thing's lining up your plastic drive to fit over your sprockets. I'm out of practice, I haven't done this in a while, so I'm failing miserably. There we go. So we've got our drive attached. We use one bar stud to secure the actual attachment. There's also a series of other smaller bolts that are a bit tricky to get at, but so I've got 2 more bolts that sit down in this gap here. I can't show you what I'm doing when I'm doing it because it's pretty fiddly in there. So I'll just put these on and then I'll come back. Okay, got the 2 10mm done up in the back there, so it's attached, done up the other bar stud. The next thing that goes on is an exhaust shield so you don't burn your hands. I think this is pretty universal to a few of the accessories. Got that out of the way, and next thing we need is our throttle. So our throttle goes from being here on top of the saw to being over there. Runs a little stud with a screw and a thumb nut that goes through a hole on the top of the handle. Okay, so now we've got our throttle set up. So it's just a little screw-in section that goes through a hole on the upper part of the handle. Creates that little lever. So over here on this end, we've got our pull. And when we do that, it works the throttle on the saw. So that's how it's powered. So this is a BT309 attachment. I'll try and get a photo of the plate. So it is actually a Stihl attachment. If you're looking for the actual model type, it's described as a 4309. There's a gearbox fill plug. There's oil that needs to be put in this, so you need to check that every so often. On the output, it's actually a Morse taper 3, so an MT3. So if I undo that nut and hammer that down, this section pulls out. Fitted to it at the minute is just a 1/2 inch shank adapter basically. So this will take a 1/2 inch shank drill bit. So any 1/2 inch drill bit will fit. There's just a couple of grub screws. I do have an MT3 chuck for it, so I can just run a normal chuck. You can also get drive adapters for it, so you can drive auger bits. You probably can run up to sort of 10 or 12 inch ones, but really the bigger ones you're better off using the BT309, which is a 2-man. Otherwise you're going to spin around in circles a lot. So accessories that you could get for these, at least in Australia, I'm not sure of the rest of the world, these carry a Stihl part number. These are wood auger bits. They were sold by Stihl dealers with a Stihl part number. However, they're manufactured by a company called Atom in Australia. These are just large wood auger bits. These are very popular with guys doing fences with wooden posts. So yeah, I have a couple of them. Try and throw one in there and drill some holes with it. Okay, so the actual practical test got cut a bit short. It was a bit of an equipment failure on me, not the actual 08S. I've got a hip issue. Couldn't carry on with that one, unfortunately. Gives you a bit of a brief overview. That was a 1-inch hole that I just drilled through a 5-inch stick yellow box sleeper, which is Australian hardwood. That thing is old and dry. That is damn hard wood. When you throw 56 or so cc's and about 4 horsepower at the problem, it's really not too bad. So just something quick to touch on with these drill bits. They're designed to be sharpened with a flat file, so you can do them with like a depth gauge style file, so you can sharpen them in the field. They really are quite incredible at the job that they do. So that's roughly an 08S with the BT309. It can do other things. Like I said, it can drive earth augers, so it can drill holes in the ground. It is a bit tricky because it's only a one-man one. So any big job or a lot of rock, you'll go around in circles. So that's where the 308, the two-man, comes into it. These are available as multiple different things. You may see them as an FS08, which was a brush cutter or a clearing saw, the TSs, so the demo saws. There are a wide range of bits of equipment. They are really cool. Just a word of warning, if you are interested in one of these and you see them for sale, people ask outrageous money for them. They are not worth it. They are not very collectible. They are not rare. They sold in huge numbers. So if you see these things for sale for like 400 bucks, they're dreaming. Don't waste your time. Anyway, I'm going to pack this thing away. I'm going to try and set up as a chainsaw again and make an effort to go out and use it. People will be surprised just how efficient they are. Obviously, there's no real safety, so it's hard to recommend them as a saw to use, but they are entertaining. So we'll leave it at that. Maybe one day I'll show the two-man auger and we'll drill a big hole in the ground, but time will tell.